90.3 WHPC now presents Law You Should Know. The law affects every aspect of our lives, our home, our jobs, and our recreational activities. Now, learn about the law and how to protect yourself against the loss of your liberty or property, and learn how to stand up for your rights and seek compensation when you have been wronged. Your host for Law You Should Know is attorney Kenneth J. Landau, a past dean of the Nassau Academy of Law, and frequently lectures to lawyers on ethics and avoiding problems with clients, and to the public on how to choose and use lawyers. This is Law You Should Know on the voice of Nassau Community College, 90.3 WHPC.
Hi, this is Ken Landau, and welcome to Law You Should Know. Today we're going to cover the do's and don'ts concerning retirement, and our special guest is Gary Sirak. He's the head of Sirak Financial Services, and he's an expert at when it's time to think and trying to figure out your retirement plan. Gary, welcome to Law You Should Know.
Thanks, Ken. Great to be here.
Let's start out by give us some ideas about, is there a right time for someone to retire?
That's a really good question because it's really changed. The right time to retire, I feel, is if you're retiring to something and not from something. I think a lot of people retire from something because of an age demographic, and they don't really know what they're doing next, and that's really a problem. So I think you can retire early if you have something to retire to. If you don't, that usually bodes poorly.
On the flip side of that, if you don't have something to work for, let's say your job comes to an end, your skill is no longer that valuable. You have other goals in life, or you want to change careers. Are those other reasons to retire?
Absolutely. 100%. Yeah, all of those come all the way to the top of the list.
And we're just going through the period of COVID. Has that affected people's thoughts about retirement?
Oh, absolutely, Ken. I have people coming to see me who I thought were planning to retire. And after COVID, working from home, they've decided they miss the social side of work. They really appreciated going to lunch with their fellow employees and actually have pulled the plug on retirement. And then I have another group that once they got into the COVID mode of working, really have decided that's pretty good and they don't really need to work anymore and they're going to retire. They're okay. They figured out the rest of their life. So it's really run both ways.
And sometimes there could be health issues as well, either their own or a relative, or maybe they feel some other calling.
I think health is a very big part of this. I think some people, the stress level has taken them to the retirement mode. I certainly work with a lot of doctors, and I can tell you nurses, and those people have been pushed harder than I've ever seen, and they're always pushed, but this is extreme.
What if someone on the other side feels retirement is not for them? Should they work as long as possible? Should they just maintain that as their focus?
I'm a big fan of retiring when you're supposed to and not retiring when you're not. And I've watched people retire too soon, and that was a train wreck. I've also watched people work part-time. I love part-time work. I think that's a great strategy to ease out of a full-time job. And I think that strategy can be wonderful for as much as 5-10 years, depending who you're working for or what you're doing.
So it could be cutting back on your current job, partnering with someone else who wants to cut back, or just transitioning to another job, another career that is fewer hours.
Absolutely, Ken. In fact, that whole partnering thing is really interesting. I have one client in particular who he found someone who did exactly what he did, and they now job share. I thought that was really cool. So they're both working part-time, and it works out really well.
And it's important for employers, big or small, to have a different attitude about job sharing. It may be appropriate for many reasons, but one of them is in retirement. So do employers need a different attitude about that to make it more possible?
I think so much. I think people miss how smart people are at retirement. I mean, I look at some people at 60, 65. They're brilliant at what they do, and the company hasn't replaced them adequately so they can actually do what they need to do inside, and I think it's a real problem. I think keeping that seasoned veteran around is a good idea.
And if things have slowed down, if you've slowed down, you can always try it temporarily and just see how it works for you. And when conditions or need for your services increases, you can always go back to full-time status.
Absolutely. I actually have one of my employees who wanted to retire, and I convinced her she should work part-time. She worked part-time for a year and a half. And then she finally said, okay, Gary, I have the rest of my life figured out. I'm going to retire. So I threw her a nice party.
So it's a win-win situation for both the worker and the employer. It allows them to try out different situations and different dynamics.
Absolutely. And I love the fact that in my case, Carolyn was able to train her successor. That was so invaluable. I mean, I can't begin to stress how important that was for the person coming up.
Now, is retirement about other issues besides the financial aspects?
Absolutely. It's really why I wrote my book, How to Retire and Not Die, Ken, because what I'm finding is everybody thinks retirement's about money. And it is up to a point, but after that, it becomes, okay, I've got the money side figured out or I don't. It's what do I do with the rest of my life? I call it running a marathon or living a marathon 26 years. How do you spend that 26 years? What are you going to do?
And you also talk about the 3 Ps, passion, purpose, and planning. And especially if you no longer have as much passion and purpose about your job, perhaps it's time to think about passion and purpose and planning for the next portion of your life.
I 100% concur. That is exactly what the book is about. And it's really guidelines on how to figure that out because most people have no clue. I work with hundreds of people in retirement mode, and I always ask the question, what's next after we get through the money part? And I would say 9 out of 10 look at me like a deer in headlights, Ken.
But let's talk about the money part for a moment, and then we'll go on to the 3 Ps, the passion, purpose, and planning for retirement. So let's talk about the money part.
Well, the money part's critical. Obviously, food, clothing, and shelter. But what I've found, it's math. I want to know a budget. And I asked my clients, I said, I want a budget. I said, I want a real budget. I want to know what you're really spending your money on so we know how much money you really need so you can figure out if retirement's right for you, if you need to work part-time, if you need to drive Uber. I don't really care what it is. I just want to make sure the math works. And so many people have no clue about that math. I mean, they come in and don't really have their numbers. They don't have it organized. It's not the best way to approach retirement.
But their expenses may go down. They may be able to live in a smaller house in a lower taxed area. They might spend less because they don't need as much clothing or food. They might be able to live on, and they may have other streams of income coming in, Social Security, retirement, residuals.
Absolutely. There's a man named Tom Hegna. He wrote a good book, Paychecks, Playchecks. But what I liked in that book is he talked about the go-go years, the slow go years, and the no-go years. And I think that's a great concept. The go-go years being you just retired, you got money, you've got energy, you go, go, go. The slow go years, you don't have quite as much energy. Hopefully you still have enough money and you just do some things, but not all the things. In the no-go years, you're pretty much content to sit on a couch and watch NFL football or baseball or whatever you're going to do and live the rest of your life.
Why is passion so important as you think about retirement or the next stage of your life?
Well, I'm a big fan of passion is what you do for yourself. So I'm a huge fan of figuring out what makes Gary happy. And I have a list of things that I'm passionate about. One of them is connecting people to other people, solving problems for people. Those are 2 of my personal passions. And music. I love music. I can't play, I can't sing, and I can't hum, but I sure like to go to shows. Those are things I'm passionate about. And those are definitely part of my semi-retirement world.
I guess for other people, it also could be a charity, a public service, finding activities that you enjoy and perhaps that do not cost too much. And what else is involved?
No, you hit those all on the head, and those become part of it. I have some people that become coaches for people. They'll consult. They'll meet people, just to have a social circle. I go to one coffee shop, a couple different ones, and there's always a group of people sitting around having a conversation at 9 o'clock in the morning. It's their little social club. So, I mean, and the nonprofit charitable thing, I think is huge. I think that is so important. And it can be a great way to fulfill lots of check marks on your good side. I think that's just a positive thing to do.
And those clubs, it could be a social club, a special interest club, a mentoring club, one doing community service. It's important to have some activities as part of your day and time. Have some structure to your retirement.
You hit it right on the head. I was going to use the word structure. You got me. You beat me to it, Ken. Structure is what it's all about. Having structure. I like to have 3 things a day, 3 activities a day. that I'm supposed to do. And they can be as small as meeting a group of people for coffee, having lunch with somebody. It doesn't matter what the 3 are, but I want to have 3 a day. That's 15 a week. That's a pretty good week.
And it doesn't necessarily have to be social, but it could be an activity you enjoy. Maybe it's going to the library, once a week, going on a walk in a certain area once a week, taking a trip to another area, once a week.
Can you hit again? That's exactly how I structure mine. I look for things that are interesting to do and things that are maybe stuff I don't always do. And those are discovering a good bakery is something new. I mean, we found a bakery. We live in Canton, Ohio. We just learned about a bakery up in Akron I didn't even know existed. We're going. I mean, that's kind of fun stuff to do. And yeah, it's an activity. It's something that you enjoy doing.
And it could be a restaurant or a coffee shop that you enjoy, and you just go there once a week or so, even if it's on your own, just to relax and see what's going on in the world.
Absolutely. There's a group of guys that I know. They call themselves the Geezers. There's a reason. And they play golf together and they also bowl. And then they have lunch after their golf. It's a very much social club. There must be 20 of them. And they meet literally twice a week. In golf season, they golf, and bowling season, which is the rest of the year, they bowl. And they have a great time.
And there probably are other groups organizations that offer trips of seniors or some kind of activity, whether it's a music or a lecture or a new hobby or something along those lines.
Yeah, and there are, and you can find them in community centers. I know the YMCA is very good at organizing trips. Different places organize things. There was one I saw the other day where someone had rented a bus and they're going up to a deli in Cleveland. I thought, well, that sounds good. Any of those things are fun to do.
I'd like to just remind our listeners, we're talking with Gary Sirak, and he's the head of Sirak Financial Services and also the author of the book, How to Retire and Not Die. And we're talking about the when and the best way to retire.
And I lost you.
We're talking about when and the best way to retire. And he's giving us many ideas on what's important during retirement. And any other tips on what the perfect retirement looks like?
Well, everybody's retirement's different. I mean, I have one gentleman, actually, he worked till he was 85, and he told me it was the best retirement in the world. And all his friends were jealous because he had a place to go, something to do. He was scheduled. He worked 3-4 hours a day, nothing too strenuous, but it was a way to get out of the house. He said, I've been married a long time, and it's good when I'm not there all the time. And I said, yes, that works.
And so there's nothing wrong. There's no such thing as one size fits all when it comes to retirement.
I absolutely
So
think
if you're a professional, an accountant, or a lawyer, you could still do work for the day, for a special project, or even volunteer work. Whatever your background, whatever your passion, you can try to find some kind of a work to volunteer for, whether it's tutoring or construction or just helping people who need a little extra help, and put your mind to work.
I think that's so critically important to having a healthy, happy retirement. I think those are great tools. And once you get that, that kind of structure and get that fixed time frame where you're doing those things, you're going to have a better retirement. I just can tell you, I've witnessed it year after year after year.
What about health issues and making sure you have health insurance available and making sure it's available at the right time at an affordable price? How does that dovetail with retirement? Because many people work because of their health coverage. That's why I'm saying that.
Oh, a lot. And one of the big issues when they want to retire early is we've got to make sure they've got health care for that time frame. So they want to quit at 60. Well, they don't get Medicare until 65, all of a sudden they've got a 5-year gap, and that becomes dicey, and figuring that out, it can be expensive. There are plans out there, obviously, but they're not the least expensive. They have very high deductibles. Those are problematic. Once you hit 65, it's actually quite simple. You find Medicare supplements. There's all kinds of difference out there. I mean, I get bombarded every year. And then finding the right drug plan. And again, they're a lot less expensive than traditional healthcare, and you got to have them. I mean, you just have to have those to have peace of mind.
Do you have any thoughts on what the right drug plan is? Because someone may be healthy on day one, and that can change overnight or a few years down the road.
Off the record or on the record, it's terrible. One of my big frustrations, and I unfortunately don't do much of this, but I have some people on my staff that do. It drives them crazy because they keep changing the drug plans, and a plan you had before, now you have this drug plan. They get very frustrated this time of year. And again, there's no rhyme or reason we can figure out other than someone's trying to figure out costs on their side.
But going back to one of your points, health care and health benefits are tied to someone's job. So if some employers might continue coverage, as part of your perks when you retire, or maybe you're with government, or maybe you had tenure as a teacher or civil servant, and that will take care of your health care at least till you're 65. If not, is it possible someone would change jobs or downsize, especially if their employer will continue to give them the health care? That might be a reason to stay working to some degree.
Oh, that is exactly correct. That is one of my strong negotiating points for my clients when they come to me and say, hey, I'm thinking about retirement. I said, let's talk about health care. And I get them to think in terms of that. And all of a sudden, they're willing to approach the owner of the company, if it's not them, and say, yeah, maybe I should work part-time and get my benefits. So there'll be a negotiation. And oftentimes, again, if they're a valued employee, the owner is going to want to keep them on board and want to keep them in the loop of the company. So I found that to be a very workable solution to that problem.
But that's a very important and almost an initial consideration. Can you work out everything so you're in a situation where you can retire? You've got to work out the healthcare issue.
Absolutely. No questions asked.
And are there other reasons? Are there other types of people who should never retire?
I have a group of people who are just so identified by their job, their occupation, their responsibilities in their company, whatever they've done, and they don't really have a life. They are hanging on a thread based on their company or their position and who they are. And I've seen very bad things happen when they quit.
Now, for those people, is it important while they're working, when they're not even thinking about retirement, to try to expand their world and develop other interests for fun or for pleasure or for sanity?
Yes. In my book, I mentioned something called a wish list. And my wish list is comprised of about 50 different things. And what it is, Ken, every time I think about something I wish I was doing, but I was working, so I couldn't do, I write it down. And I'll give you a couple real quick examples. One, I want to go to Savannah, Georgia. I've never been there. I've really been to Charleston for 2 days. I was in a meeting. I never saw the place. I want to go to Charleston. Those are places that I wrote down on my wish list. I wanted to do something, I wanted to go play this golf course. So I figured out how to get someone to get me on a course, and that was on my wish list. So there's all kinds of things that you can do while you're working that you can build some kind of a pattern for your future.
And what about working it out so that your retirement benefits, your retirement age, let's say you have some kind of public or private job with a pension, and you'll avoid, Social Security, penalties and retirement penalties. How does all that come together in deciding when to retire?
Well, a lot of that, there's a financial side, but there's the other side. And you say, listen, I had a client in today and she has no intention of taking her Social Security till she's 70. And she's got enough 401k, other money to live on. And she said, Gary, I'm just going to ride this. I don't need the money. And at 70, the increase is so substantial. She said, it takes the risk of the market off the table. And she was right. It's a very good move for her.
Right.
Now, if she very poor health, that would be a very different discussion.
How many years do you have to work after age 70 to make back the difference in what you would have if you've taken it at 63 or 65, 66? That's something most people don't think about, and I don't hear it mentioned. So you get a lot at 70, and health we don't always know, but how many years does it take to come out ahead?
Well, when I did my own, I will tell you, I took mine at 66. And the reason I did that is I did the math, and I said, you know what, I'll take my chances. It's about 12 years. And so I'm ahead of them for 12 years until we cross over. I said, okay, that puts me at 78. I'm good with that.
And on the other hand, there are some ways to pay it back and start again. But so everyone has to make their own decision. For many people, it pays to take it at full retirement benefit, which is 66, 67, because it will take so many years to recoup back any extra you might get down the road.
Absolutely. That is, again, correct. I look at that every time I meet with somebody, Ken. That's one of the first things that pops up. When should we really tap your Social Security? When should we tap your 401k? What do we want to do? Your IRAs? All of that comes into play.
I just want to mention again, we're talking with Gary Sirak. He's the author of the book, How to Retire and Not Die. And we're talking about do's and don'ts concerning retirement for lawyers and others out there. Again, has COVID changed these guidelines or the timing of retirement for many of your clients and others out there? Do you think COVID will be a factor as we move forward? And even, during COVID and after COVID?
I think it's going to have changed this. Yes, definitely. It's going to have changed us. It certainly has changed how people look at retirement, either pro or against. And it also looks at the timeline. I've had some people in who I really thought would work for a long time, and they just said, nope, we're done. We've seen what happened. We lost some friends. We saw whatever they saw. And they decided they're just going to pack in their jobs and go live the rest of their life and have a good time if they can. I've seen that. I've seen the other side where people said, I think my mindset is different. You got to have a retirement mindset to go into retirement. And I think that's a huge mistake. People don't really get that, and they need to. Having that thought process, I'm retired. This is what I'm doing. I'm going to start my new life. That's really a key point also.
And when you say retirement mindset, what do you mean by that? They have to think about it. They have to practice. They have to plan it out years in advance?
Yes, I think that's very important. And then one of the things I stress with my clients is I want them to look for somebody I call a retirement mentor. I want them to find someone they know that's successfully retired, that's happy, that has figured this out. And I want them to sit down and have coffee, lunch, whatever it takes, and find out what they did, how they figured out, because it is not easy. It's a full contact sport. And it's 24/7. All of a sudden, instead of 2 days a week, you're off 7 days a week. That's a lot of time to fill.
So
Those are a big deal.
So you want to find out what worked for them and what problems they encountered and how they resolved them.
Yes.
In terms of finding activities to fill your time, finding new passions, do you have any other thoughts about that?
Well, yes, I do a real simple thing called likes, loves, and hates. So I do that for my personal life. I did that in my business. The things I like, I start with things I hate doing. And I see what that list is. It's usually longer than I like. And then I get to the like list. It's shorter than the hate list. And it's the things I really like and enjoy. And then the stuff I love. And there's not that many things I love, Ken. But what I do is I look at those two likes and loves and say, okay, what can I build my time around those things? Because the Lord knows I don't want to do the things I hate.
So in finding your passions for retirement, is it necessary to have a long love list, or you just have to find enough things on your like list?
On your like list is good, because some of those likes, once you get really involved, could turn into loves. I've seen that happen many times. And that's a really cool thing. Or all of a sudden, something you think you're going to like, you really don't like at all. So you move along and you find something else. And that's where that retirement mentor comes in handy, and you see what they're doing. And, you can tail along with them sometimes if they'll let you, and find out what their world is like. It's an exploration, truly is.
Do you have any information on your website, Gary? And just give us your website.
Yeah, it's GarySirak.com.
And what kind of information do you have there about this topic?
I have the book, and I have information about the book and a lot of questions. There's all kinds of things people have asked me regarding that. And so I have put some information there. And also, I'll answer anybody's question. Someone wants to care to write me a question, believe me, they'll hear back from me.
And they can ask you the question through your website.
Absolutely. That is correct.
As we emerge from COVID, how do you think the experience of COVID will influence people about when and how to retire?
I think that it's going to, I'm seeing a lot more people retire, Ken, than I ever dreamed I would see at this point in my career. It's exponential. I can't even begin to tell you how many more people are walking in our door saying, I'm done, Gary. So I think that's the impact I'm seeing. We're getting some that are saying, oh, no, I'm going to hang around, I'm going to do this. But more and more and more are looking at it at 50, starting to say, okay, I'm 50 now, I got to get really serious. That didn't happen before, Ken. They were thinking about it 55 or 60, not anymore.
And do you think people also will say, I don't want to return to a long commute to the office? If I'm being forced to work to go there, I'm going to retire, or maybe try something else to wait till Social Security that's closer to home and a little easier?
I think we're going to see a lot more of that. I think the idea of commuting an hour and a half to work, and I have a client of mine in New York, New Jersey area that does that, and he hasn't commuted for a long time. And I talked to him and he said, yeah, I have no intention of commuting again. He said, this is just way easier. I get more done. and I don't have to spend 3 hours getting back and forth to work.
And
I think that's good.
And certainly if
work.
someone's at the age where they can retire, they can qualify for Social Security, they can draw on their pension, then for those people, it might be a no-brainer. If you have to make that trip again, you're going to just retire.
Yes. And if you need the job and your company says, hey, you're coming back, well, guess what? You're coming back unless you find something else. But I've got some clients, actually engineers that I work with, and they're kind of thinking a whole different prospect. They're looking at consulting instead of going to work full time so they can be more in charge of their life.
But again, you need that health care and you need that income stream. So as a hybrid measure, as a temporary measure, you might be able to negotiate fewer days in the office or fewer days at work with the health benefits you need until you do qualify for, Medicare and Social Security.
Ken, I was with one of my best friends just in the last couple of days, and he is doing that. He's going to Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and he's off Tuesday, Thursdays. Now, I thought it would be better if he worked Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, he could have long weekends, but the owner wanted him there for different reasons. And so that's how he's starting out. But he said when he gets there long enough and they get their system in place, he's going to try and shuffle that. So he's got 4 days off and 3 days on.
And it's certainly something to try and negotiate if you are taking a new job or you're negotiating your return to the office.
Yes.
And Gary, just give us the website again if a listener has a question or would like to find out more about your book.
GarySirak.com, and that's GarySirak.com. And the book is How to Retire and Not Die.
And I just want to remind our listeners, if you've missed any portion of this broadcast, it's available as a podcast, and you can also tell anyone else who missed the program about the podcast, and that's available at nccradio.org. Please join us next week at this same time for another program on Law You Should Know.